Hello, hello. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay, and with me, as always, is Amanda. How are you, Amanda?
I'm good. I keep hearing weird cat noises in the walls of my house, though.
Every time your husband opens his mouth?
Yes.
It's a cat.
More or less.
Yeah. Yes, we have hit, this is our 80th episode.
Holy shit.
Which means that we are on a wild card. And this time around, Amanda has chosen 2004's The Grudge.
You're welcome, Clay.
Listen, this wasn't my pick, but...
Yeah, you really hit the Amanda hard in that one.
We have rules, and I'm not going to be the one to break them. And if this is what she wants to watch, this is what we're going to watch, okay? I'm sorry in advance. This is the American remake of The Grudge, and it was a... What was this? It was a response to The Ring, which is part of why you chose it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you like to expand on that?
Sure. So when The Ring came out, and I think as we spoke about in our episode, it had a big effect on me and my taste in horror movies and all sorts of stuff, because at that point I was already a giant anime nerd. So then Japanese horror stuff started crossing over into the United States, and I was like, yes, finally my time. So The Ring came out and was huge, and then pretty shortly after The Ring came out, The Grudge came out. And I remember watching it repeatedly with my friends in our friend's basement, and everyone else other than me being absolutely terrified of it.
Everyone else other than you? Is that what you said?
I was scared of parts of it, but
Sure,
I had...
yeah.
Most of my friends, I think I've also said this, in middle school and high school, were not horror movie people. So I think half of my joy over this movie is just the glee of getting to scare the shit out of all of your friends.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were going with everyone was scared but me, so now I'm going to make sure that nobody else likes this movie either.
No, I'm going for the mildly psychotic, isn't it fun when all your friends scream and cry?
It's very fun. It's very fun. It all see what's interesting is I think I've talked about this before, but when you live with someone who has more of a less of a tolerance to that stuff, let's say, it can actually reinvigorate your own level of fear.
Yes, absolutely. There was nothing better than watching Greg's face when he caught about 30 seconds of this movie last night and had to run out of the room.
Yes.
Yes.
I believe we've mentioned Greg's aversion to the quote pop-up faces.
Yes.
And this movie is mostly pop-up faces.
You referred to it as Pop-Up Faces, the movie.
Basically, yes. Yeah. I saw this. Did I see this in the theater? I believe I saw this in the theater.
Oh, wow.
And because I definitely seen The Ring in the theater, and so this. Did I? This is 2004, so I would have been in college. I must have. I must have seen this in the theater because I don't think I would have. I don't remember renting it.
See, at this point, my friends had learned better than to let me choose the movie we were going to go see, so I definitely did not see this in the theater.
Yeah, I was about to go like, well, if I see when did it come out? If it was in the summer, I probably went to see it, but I don't care. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater. But I don't know if I've seen it since.
Oh, I haven't seen this movie in like 15 to 20 years.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast and you watched the movie in preparation for this, then congratulations, because it is apparently very hard to find at the moment.
Yeah.
It was only available to stream on Stars or Vudu.
Yes.
Or one of the other like weird... I don't even know if it was... I think it was like Sling TV was the only other thing that had it.
Or maybe the paid version of the Roku channel or something like that.
Like you couldn't... Not even Amazon. You couldn't get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Which is strange for a movie that is so relatively modern and in the same kind of zeitgeist as The Ring.
Yeah.
To be not available. There's actually a little bit of trivia that I'm not going to look up specifically, because I'm going to try and paraphrase it. But it said this is the only movie in the franchise to get a VHS release because of when it came out, like at the tail end of VHS. And it is also the only movie in the franchise to get a Blu-ray release. So apparently The Grudge is not everybody's first choice for a franchise, which is interesting. But we will get into that. We're going to play the trailer for you, take a quick break, and then we will talk about The Grudge. Okay, The Grudge. This has a 40% Rotten Tomatoes score with a 46% audience score. Not a lot of love for The Grudge. Directed by Takashi Shimizu, who is the director of the Japanese original. He also did the sequels, or the first sequel, first American sequel, and the Japanese sequels. It gets complicated with these things. Written by Steven Susko and Takashi Shimizu. Jesus. Starring Bill Pullman, Clea Duvall, William Mapother, the guy from Roswell, Laura Palmer's mother, Gen X Clint Howard, Ted Raimi, and, drumroll, for the very first time in the history of Penske-related podcast, Buffy Summers herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Now, see, this is where I get to say you're welcome, Clay, and I mean it.
Yes, thank you.
And finally, you've gotten an SMG movie.
Any Buffy-related tangent I make is now relevant just by this fact.
In all of the Penske podcasts.
Yes, it's as relevant now as it will ever be.
Yeah.
Lest we ever do the Buffy show at some point. But Amanda, what happens in The Grudge?
An American nurse living and working in Tokyo is exposed to a mysterious supernatural curse, one that locks a person in a powerful rage before claiming their life and spreading to another victim.
It sounds like herpes or something.
Yeah, well, the other summary I found was even worse. It talked all about Clea Duvall's section of the movie and nothing about Karen at all.
Well, we'll get into that stuff.
Yes, because first we have to get into the things you'll find in this movie. Things you'll find include a series of extremely milquetoast white dudes.
Yeah, well, those are the only type that moved to Japan.
I get. Seriously, Bill Pullman and the other guy are like almost identical.
They really are.
They are extraordinarily similar people. And Roswell boyfriend has zero personality in this whole movie. But we'll get it.
Yes. Oh boy. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that
guy. You'll also find a Japanese cop plot.
Yes, I was on the fence about the Japanese cop plot because I don't hate it. I think because he ends up involved to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But even so, it's so unresolved in the story that I'm not really sure why it's in there. Other than
we can get it all into it.
Other than they needed a Japanese guy to be like, we have a legend.
Yes. Yes. Let me tell you what happened in this house.
Yes.
Somebody had to do it. You'll also find a loose mandible.
Yeah, my favorite kind.
Don't
you hate it? Don't you hate it when you just drop your mandible on the floor and forget where you put it?
I mean, I haven't forgotten where I've put it, but I have definitely dropped a mandible on a floor before.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you have at least one in your house, right?
I have more.
One loose mandible.
Well, I mean, I guess it's not loose. It's still attached to the rest of the head.
Oh, okay.
Well, never mind. Anyway, the very real fear of an expat pre-smartphone in Tokyo.
Yes.
And I can just imagine this because I have been to Tokyo and it's an amazing place, but I have been to Tokyo in the recent past. So I had, GPS and maps that actually worked. There are translation apps. There are guides and internet everywhere. I cannot imagine. Like, one of the most relatable moments in this movie is when Clea Duvall's character says, I went out for a walk and I got lost and there was no one around who spoke English to help me. It's like, oh man, yeah, that actually sounds, that's the scariest thing in this movie.
Do you think that there is less of a market for that kind of story now that there are so many aids? Because a big part of this story, one of the things that actually makes it unique from The Ring is that they didn't change the location. It's still in Japan. Yeah. They just changed the main characters to be expats or immigrants, however you want to look at foreign exchange students.
I want to talk all about that, but I've got a couple more things for you on my list. You'll also find creepy little boys all the way up.
All the way up.
All the way up.
I remember that bit from the trailer. Like
it's really good. I really like it.
Yeah, they put a lot of the good stuff in the trailer, but all of it's all good. It all works.
Yeah, in the moment, it definitely all works. And finally, questionable / just bad parenting.
Yeah.
I think when you drown your child in a bathtub, it's bad parenting.
I think there's a bad parenting all around. I think I think ultimately it's something that maybe a couple counseling sessions could have cleared up.
The murder?
The murder and the weird infatuation with your TA or your professor or whatever.
Your professor, yeah.
Yeah. Lot of questionable parenting and bad parenting all around.
Yes.
So yes, the Grudge. This was greenlit after the success of The Ring. It was the first one out of the gate after The Ring.
Yeah, that feels correct.
Yeah, and there was another one I saw in college that was not a remake. It was an original. It was a Korean movie called The Eye.
Oh.
Which was freaky as hell.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and really creeping me out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think makes this movie different from The Ring is I find this to be The Ring is a better movie.
Yes.
But I think this has scarier stuff in it.
I think so too. I have a bunch of thoughts. I have so many thoughts about this movie, especially especially in comparison to The Ring. Because I think The Ring definitely does have a tighter narrative and a clearer narrative and a plot.
Yeah, not a lot of plot
much clearer.
In this one.
They're moving in a direction in The Ring. There is a central main character who's easily identifiable. There is a central problem she is trying to solve, and there is a deadline by which she must solve it. And there are a series of clues, right? That's The Ring.
Yeah.
This movie is much more just like a bunch of people got tied up and caught up somehow in a series of horrific events.
Yes.
Just purely based on proximity to one another. Nobody really... There's really only one or two people in this whole movie that have taken any action that has caused any of these things.
Yeah.
Most of the people who get caught up in it are purely just bystanders.
Yeah, and it's strange because I think coming off of The Ring, you come into this movie sort of with the preconception, rightly or wrongly, that the same sort of thing is going on. Where and that's they kind of set it up that way. There seems to be a mystery at the core of what's going on.
Yeah,
as there are with most ghost movies, it's usually like, all right, well, what's the ghost mad about? Let's find out. And with this one, as it unfolds, the structure's so weird.
Yes,
and as you start getting these pieces, which on their own are pretty creepy, when you finally get to the payoff of what this is all about, you don't get the same sort of aha or visceral response that you do with the ring,
Right.
because I think the explanation actually raises more questions than without it.
Oh, really?
Well, just because I found the explanation to be I kept waiting for there to be another plot element that tied things together a bit more.
I see what you're saying.
So when like you get into the Bill Pullman stuff, I was thinking, oh, he's clearly had an affair with this woman.
Right.
But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Right.
And I was waiting for something else from the boyfriend, some sort of just literally anything from that guy. And that never
from
happens.
That beige wall of a human being.
Yeah, and even Karen herself.
Yeah.
I was watching this going like, what are the rules here? Like there doesn't seem to be any rules.
Yeah.
Grudge can apparently follow you wherever. I'm going to be referring to the ghost as Grudge, by the way. Grudge can apparently follow you to work.
Which is a great professional wrestler name.
It is. Yeah. I'm sure there is at least one, if not more. Grudge can apparently follow you to work or follow you home to your apartment.
I keep giggling when you refer to her as Grudge. Yes, Grudge can go wherever Grudge wants to go.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. And Grudge seems to be indiscriminate in the order in which it kills people, because it kills Ted Raimi before. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar has no encounter with Grudge after the first time until the last time, and she
sees her in like a bus window or something.
Yeah, but she's not doing anything.
Yeah.
Grudge follows the woman home and kills her at her house.
Yeah.
And so it's
when Doug goes to the house at the very end, she kills Doug like immediately.
Yeah,
showing her good taste.
And son of Grudge follows the girl all the way up in the elevator.
God damn it, Chloe.
But you know what I mean? Like there's not really there's no real rules, and like you get to the end and it's kind of like, all right, so is the idea here that Karen? Why is Grudge revealing the story to Karen? You know what I mean? Like it's when it gets into the plot stuff, I find it to be pretty loosey-goosey.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the scares in it are legitimately creepy and scary.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason I wanted to do this movie is because I do remember it being scarier overall than The Ring. Mm-hmm. Like the Ring has a couple moments that are really great.
Yeah.
This movie has more moments that will, I think, visually stick with you and are the kind of thing that would pop up later on in like a dream or something, especially if you watch this when you're younger.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that kind of just floats around in the back of your head. Like there's even the scene where the one woman who's at her office at night is getting kind of trailed and chased. I think it's her. Or maybe it's somebody, I don't even remember. But the ghost is attacking one of the characters, and then she tries to turn to a door, and then its head is in the door and just kind of floats down towards her.
They got some good use out of that fake head.
Oh, they absolutely did. And it's just uncanny looking enough.
Yes.
Do you know what like it doesn't need to be gory, it doesn't need to be super grotesque. It's just an uncanny enough humanoid mask of a face that it triggers something in your brain, at least for me, that you see a human face but it's wrong, which I know we've talked about a lot, that being sort of a real trigger for fear in the human psyche. And so I think that's why it works so well throughout the movie, even though you do see her face several times.
Yeah, and it's they never linger on it.
Yeah, it's usually pretty quick.
Yeah. And yeah, the thing with The Ring is that, like you said, you kind of have a banger of an opening and a banger of an ending. And then the middle, as I believe we talked about, is kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's if you're into the mystery of it, it's very engaging.
Yep.
It's very
moody.
Yeah, it's a great looking movie.
Yes.
But it's not really super scary in the middle.
Right.
But
there are moments of disturbing events, like the horse suicide.
Yes.
That's very disturbing, but it's not frightening in that sort of I'm watching a scary movie, that adrenaline shot way.
Yeah.
It's more just like, ooh, yikes. Oh, yeah. I don't like horse suicide.
Brian Cox suicide, however, totally fine. Yeah, it is a strange one in that I wonder if by the time you get to the end and it does kind of start to tell you what's going on, I feel like you almost kind of have to decide whether or not that matters to you, if it makes sense, because this one definitely is relying on just creepy imagery and scares more than plot. And so I almost, like, I don't know, I think it lets me down a bit because it does kind of fall to pieces so much. I'm just looking for like one piece to really kind of like hook things up a little bit more.
Yeah.
To make it all feel, I'm going to say feel worth it, but I don't mean that to say that the movie's not worth it, because I do think it is good. But it just, you're expecting this payoff at the end and this tight explanation.
Right.
And you kind of get it and you kind of don't.
Yeah. Can I want to give sort of I don't know if I would call it a theory around that, or more of just an idea that I've been kicking around in my head about this one, where I wonder if the structure of the movie doesn't do it a disservice.
Yes.
With the nonlinear narrative and the jumping around in time.
Yeah.
Because I think what that does, and maybe I'm wrong, I might rethink this as we talk about it, but what I kind of think that does is it sets you up to be looking for that kind of big reveal, to be expecting that they found the right key in the right lock, and they turn it and it goes, aha, I understand now, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what that sort of moving back and forth and parceling out these little tidbits of people's stories to you, at least for me, that's what it feels like it's driving towards, is some big climactic reveal. But the reveal is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, for the most part.
It's that the woman who used to live in this house became obsessed with her professor and was lightly stalking him.
Yes.
And there was evidence of her obsession in the house. Her husband found it and lost his mind and killed her and their son and himself. And the unsettled spirits of that family that died horribly violently are now tethered to the house, and anyone who comes into the house is vulnerable to these ghosts.
Right.
But that's like, as ghost stories go, that's pretty straightforward.
Sure, yeah.
A murder-suicide family annihilation situation where now the ghosts are mad.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like with The Ring, where there's sort of the slow peeling back of the different events that turn your understanding in that kind of kaleidoscope way until a full picture emerges. It doesn't really need that.
Yeah.
It's too straightforward of a story.
I almost wonder if related to what you're saying, if that structural hanky-panky is due to the fact that it is so straightforward.
Yeah, maybe.
And that kind of chopping it up is a way to keep it kind of. And did you see Dunkirk?
No.
So, well, spoilers for Dunkirk. One of the things about Dunkirk that people had a big problem with is you're kind of following these two stories. You're following the guys on the beach, and you're following Tom Hardy in a plane.
Cool.
And as the movie starts to come to the climax, you realize that the Tom Hardy plane story is like 2 days earlier. And I think there was a lot of people who were like, well, why did they need to do that? There's no reason for that to be like a different timeline. And when I saw it, my first instinct was, it's you got to do something to mix it up, I guess, to make it not so straightforward. It's been a while since I've seen it. I can't remember what I would think of it now, but
yeah.
And so I'm wondering if that's part of it, because as kind of you were saying, I feel like once they start jumping into flashback, you start thinking, okay, this is going to be important.
Yes.
And ultimately, so when they jump back to Laura Palmer's mother,
yes,
and her family and Clay Duvall showing up.
Yep. The Williamses.
Yeah, that's important, like thematically, maybe.
Right.
Because it's another expat family who is having trouble with the lay of the land, etc., getting used to things.
Acclimating and yeah.
But as far as the plot goes, it's only important because they are also dead. You know?
Right. And their mother, Laura Palmer's mother, who in this movie her name is Emma. Emma is the reason why they need like senior assistance help.
Right.
And that help going missing, Yoko going missing, is why Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up at the house at all.
Right.
So that's really the only reason they're important, is that they're an American family with an elderly family member who needs an aid. And at some point that ends up being Karen.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why they're important. It's like because they're dead and because they got her into the house.
Right.
Like,
you know, now that I'm thinking about it,
yes,
I don't think I do like the Japanese cop plot in this movie, and I'll tell you why. Because
you
Karen,
don't like Nakagawa-san?
He's fine, and I love that in these movies, all the Japanese cops wear trench coats like they're from the 40s, like they all just watched Columbo. And
I choose to believe that they still do in real life.
But Karen doesn't have a ton to do in this movie.
No.
And so once the cops show up and you have the cop find the other two bodies in the attic, like I feel like that's all stuff Karen should be doing.
Yes.
Because that at least is driving her towards something. Because instead of just once you kind of jump back to the present, she's just sort of like flustered for a while.
Yes.
And then she goes on the, gratuitous, I need to search the internet for what this is about.
I need to go to this poor bereaved widow and ask her about her dead husband.
Yeah, and it's like, that's whatever. I mean, that's just par for the course. That's almost exactly what happens in The Ring. And so I think her having more to do would make the flashback stuff feel, especially since she is also a little bit out of her element and adjusting to that, giving her more of a connection to that family would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's so if I recall correctly, and I might not, because I have seen the Japanese version of this movie.
I cannot remember if I think I have. I cannot remember.
I know I have. I'm not claiming to remember much of it. But I do think that the plot and the structure of this one mirror the Japanese one almost identically.
I believe you're right.
Like I think this is very much modeled on that one.
Yes, the director I believe said that he wanted to do the remake because it would allow him to fix some stuff that he didn't like about the original. Yeah. And the cop is an amalgamation of a couple characters from the original. I think the Bill Pullman character, there's something about him is taken from one of the sequels. So there's like stuff from the sequels of The Grudge that has kind of been folded back into the first one in this movie. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that going on where it's like it is very structurally similar, except the Karen character dies in that one.
Yeah, which almost might be better. It's tough because I feel like in this movie, Sarah Michelle Gellar is the protagonist in the sense that she is, especially at the time, the biggest name in the movie. Yeah. Like, she's the most recognizable. Right. She's got the most star power. So because plot-wise and even screen time-wise, I don't know if she gets the most screen time.
She might not, because that flashback is not a short flashback.
Right. Yeah. So it's this...
And then the cop shows up, and he takes up a bunch of time. Yes. And then they go off to the sister, who gets grudged.
Yep. It's so interesting, because I think it's really hard if you take the celebrity out of it and you just look at the characters as they are on it during the movie. It's really hard to say which one of them, if this was cast with all total unknowns, like who would you read as the main character of this movie? Yeah. I think it would be a lot harder. And I think that's one way, in addition to the non-linear structure, that makes this movie feel very unmoored, is that you don't have one strong, clear protagonist who's like on some sort of mission, whether self-appointed or otherwise. And the character groups are all very divided. Most people you see in this movie are dead before the movie starts. Like dead before you get to the Sarah Michelle Gellar part of the movie. Which is, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, we're going to call that the present day in the movie. Most everyone else is dead.
Because every day that she is on screen is a gift.
It's the first day of your life every time. But I think that makes it tough too, because she doesn't have any relationship with any of these people.
Right. Yes. It's not like we know that she's friends with Yoko or something.
Right.
Or,
she knows Yoko because they work at the same place,
Yeah.
but she's an intern. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar's an exchange student getting credit for her classes.
Yep.
She's not a permanent employee. They're not close. You never see them interact. You never hear them say, "Oh, I was wondering why she missed movie night last night. Like we hang out all the time," or like, "She's my roommate," or whatever. It's not that.
It's also weird to me. I didn't know exactly how old she was when she did this, but this is like, I think Buffy's over at this point.
I think so.
2004?
Yeah.
I think so. And yeah, I think it would have just ended because they did 7 seasons. It started in 97. But I never for a second thought that she was a student. Like, she doesn't look old. I mean,
no.
she looks fantastic. I mean, let's just be
all right. Okay, move it along.
It's not
keep
beat
it
around the bush.
going.
But I just never thought that she was playing a student, because I mean, she probably was like 28 or something when she did this, maybe 29.
But she also just doesn't, as a character, the character doesn't read that way.
Yeah.
You see her either in her apartment or at work.
Yes.
You don't see her going to classes or on a campus. You don't see her saying to her boring ass boyfriend, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry I can't tonight. I really got to study. You know, I have that huge exam tomorrow."
Right, yeah.
Like, she just seems to be living in Japan and working a job.
Yep.
Which I think could have been totally fine. It could have been that her boyfriend was, a PhD student and he was working on a project in Japanese literature and he had a grant to work in Tokyo for a year. And she went with him because she's like, "Well, I'm a nurse. I can get work anywhere. I can, you know."
Honestly, there's probably maybe this is a cliche story, but I feel like there's almost a more interesting story there if she is there to if he is there for a purpose, like you're saying, he's working on a PhD or something, and she is there with him, but not necessarily psyched about it,
right?
And so you get more of that fish out of water, stranger in a strange land kind of thing, which then feeds into everything else that's going on.
Yeah, I think there's almost a version of this where she and Clea Duvall's characters are more combined.
Yes.
Where it's kind of like, I came here because it's important to my partner. It's a temporary situation. I can do this for a year or two. I can figure these things out, but I'm not super into it.
You know, the other thing, so the structure, I feel like, is the most fascinating thing about this movie. And as I was thinking about it, I kind of felt like it feels a little bit like Audition in certain places, because Audition has that kind of unannounced time jumping that it does, a bit where it jumps to the etc. And I find it interesting because the idea of having this main character in, let's say it's sort of like a Janet Leigh in Psycho situation, right? Where you're following her up to a certain point, and then the Grudge shows up.
Yes.
And then you jump back, or then you start this new story. There's something kind of fun about, like, oh, okay, well, I didn't realize she was done.
Right.
New story. Oh, wait, this is a flashback. And then you pick back up later on, as they do in the movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's the thing that's almost missing is that somebody from that flashback needs to have survived.
Right.
And so Sarah Michelle Gellar can talk to that person.
Right.
You know?
Or you need to have seen in that flashback that like she also came into the house sometimes and like knew the family or like I think there just needs to be more of a tether than the fact that it's like I entered the house once.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Laura Palmer's mother there's an opportunity there where maybe if they didn't kill her so quick.
Yeah. Or just gave her more lines while she was alive.
Yes. She has one line.
Yeah. I just want her to leave me alone.
Yes, that's it. But yeah, there's just it feels very Japanese in that it has this sort of jumping around flashback structure that is just sort of vignettes more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think maybe in some cases I don't know if it's just because like culturally you're more acclimated to that maybe outside of America, having a film of that nature where there is less of a direct protagonist and the vignette structure is more familiar and therefore feels more understandable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe for us it just feels foreign because the way American movies are typically structured is there's like one brilliant individual who's the only one who can fix what's going on. It's very like American exceptionalism all the time.
And it's so strange too, because if you took the Clea Duvall section out, nothing changes except for Laura Palmer's mother. But like when Karen starts doing her research, she's not looking into that family. She's going to Bill Pullman.
Because they know what happened to that family.
Yeah.
At least they think they do. They know, like, you know, they find them in the attic.
Yeah.
And so it's this horrible, tragic thing, but it's not a mystery.
True.
It's not like, why is this house evil? You know, she wants to know what drove them to it. And it just, but again, you know, we kind of, in our things you'll find, it was creepy little boys all the way up. This is like Grudge Ghost all the way down. Like there's no difference between like, why did they do it? The evil ghost did it.
Right.
You know, it's just all the time. That's the answer. It's just that like there is a curse and it killed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a frustrating movie in a lot of senses because I think there are some really great moments. I think the sequence where the sister is in her office is actually really well done. I agree that it's kind of confusing when you start to think about the like, what are the rules here? So this Grudge ghost can leave.
You can just say Grudge, it's fine.
That's her first name?
Yes.
It's not Kayako?
No.
But she can leave the house. She can haunt you wherever she so chooses. She can grudge all up and down Tokyo.
Noun and a verb, yes. Proper noun.
Proper noun and verb. But I still think it's really well done when she's like alone at night.
Yeah.
In the building. I think it's really creepy when she's in the stairwell. Like I like that stuff. I think the sequences with people looking in that damn closet are really scary.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I think those are used to excellent effect.
It's like a dumb waiter to hell. It's
yes.
Like, every time they open it,
time
something new disturbing.
Something horrible is in there. Loose mandibles, cat boys, whatever.
Son of Grudge.
TV son of Grudge. But I also think the vignette structure means that you're rushing through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it does, it feels, you watch these flashbacks or these moments with certain characters and it just feels like they're trying to get to the point where the scary thing happens and then they just drop it and move on. I found that I kind of missed some of the suspense of The Ring.
Yeah.
You know, like when you think about The Ring, even just taking that opening segment with the two teenage girls, that goes on for several minutes.
Right.
You know, they come home, they're kind of in the bedroom and they're bantering and giving each other shit and scaring each other. They go downstairs. One of them talks to her mom on the phone. They're getting like a snack. They move through the house and then the scary stuff happens.
Right.
And it gives you a little more time I think, to start to worry and to start to be a little bit like, what is that? What is happening? And they do that occasionally in this movie, but there are so many. I feel like I wish I had written down examples that would have helped. But I feel like I got this sense a couple different times that they were just, here's a good one. When Sarah Michelle Gellar has come to the house and it's nighttime and she's still waiting for someone to show up. I wish they had kind of played with the idea of her being alone in the house in the dark longer, because she's there for the afternoon and it's daytime and she's helping Emma get back in bed and she's doing some laundry and she's just kind of hanging around. But then when the potential to kind of have her be drawn around the house and show her a little bit more happens, I just feel like they didn't use it to full effect. They sort of have her meet Toshio, the boy, son of Grudge, and then she goes back into Emma's room and then she sees Grudge and then we're out. we're done. So it's just weird. I guess it's just like it adds to that disjointed feeling that I'm not sure if it really adds to the scariness or if it subtracts from it.
Yeah, I found it to be I feel like it's the scares themselves are maybe not conventional, but I feel like the setups were fairly conventional.
That's a good way of putting it.
As far as if you want to look at the sister in her office and then back at her house, it has all the kind of hallmarks of this kind of thing where it's like, she's alone in the thing. Yeah. Phone rings, dead brother. Yeah. She just goes outside, nobody's at the door. It's relatively conventional.
I did used to call my friends and try and make that creaking noise into the phone.
Nice.
Yeah. I did it to one of my friends and she stopped picking up the phone when I called her.
Excellent. Mission accomplished. But yeah, it's I feel like the strength of this movie and the strength of the scary stuff in this movie is how different and unnerving it is.
Yes. Yeah, like, having Grudge's face turned towards you when she's been crawling down the stairs or whatever.
The first time you see her in the attic. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's really, really
the one
well
that
done.
Actually really got me pretty good because I've always this has always creeped me out. So you get a bit of it during the sister sequence where you see Grudge on the security camera, but you only get a little bit of her showing up and then they kind of cut away. Yeah. And then the cop watches the tape.
Yes.
And most movies would have him watch the tape and see nothing.
Right.
This actually recorded the Grudge showing up. But
and just kind of rising up into the screen.
That's the thing. It turns into a scare for the cop because she moves towards the camera.
Right. As though she's walked down the hallway and out of sight.
Yes. Disappears and then rises up directly in front of the lens so all you can see is her big wide eyes.
Yes.
And for some reason...
making some sort of creepy whispery kind of...
Yeah. For some reason, that has always unnerved me. Like the breaking of the fourth wall like that has always freaked me out. I remember there was a show... I don't remember what the show was. It was one of those like haunting shows on TLC or something, right? This is years and years and years ago. I would love to I don't even know how you would find this out, but there's something about watching those shows when you're of a certain age where even though there is zero production value, they figure out a way to creep the fuck out of you.
Well, did you ever watch, I think it's called Fear.
The MTV show?
Yes.
Oh, I love that show.
Oh, I love that show. Every so often I find those on YouTube and I just rewatch them and I'm like sitting in the living room eating popcorn like that Michael Jackson gif from Thriller and Greg walks in and just immediately walks back out again.
I can't remember if I've mentioned this before on the show. I may have. There was one episode of that show that ruined it for me. Like it totally snapped the illusion. Oh. Because I was, when that show started, 100% in. Yeah. Really creepy, totally bought in. Then there was an episode where they were in an old abandoned prison, right? And one of the guys had to go up onto this ledge where there was a noose hanging, and he had to put...
I remember this, and it was pretty much like they implied it was like, you're going to have to hang yourself.
Yes, he had to put his head in the noose and then like push this big cinder block off that ledge or something. And he's freaking out. He's like, I don't want to do it. And I'm watching this. I'm like, MTV is not going to execute you at 9 p.m. on cable.
But I think the point of that is that you've gotten so deep into the environment. You're psychologically, you're just so shaken by the atmosphere and everything else that you have stopped seeing things objectively.
It took me out of it because that one, the thing that worked well on that show was when you couldn't see the hand of the producer.
Yeah.
And that was the one where I was like, that feels like that's a bit.
Right.
You know,
right. The ones where it was just sort of like, go sit in solitary. Like, go down into the hole and sit in the solitary confinement cell for the next 2 hours while nobody comes to get you.
Yeah.
Those were the things where you were like, yeah, I can imagine being like, nope, get me out of here.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But there was a show, I was watching one of those haunting shows or whatever, and they were doing a story about someone who was staying in a hotel, and the person was explaining what happened, and he was like, yeah, and then in the middle of the night I woke up and I looked at the television and there were just two giant eyes staring at me from the screen of the TV, and I went over and I unplugged the TV and the eyes were still, and they dramatized this, and it was terrifying. It was so fucking creepy. And that, I don't know if that was the first time, but that has always been something that freaks me out.
I have a similar, it's funny because I have a different but similar idea thing from this movie. For me, it's the scene where she's in the shower and she's washing her hair and she touches the back of her head and she feels a hand in her hair.
Yeah.
As somebody who's had pretty long hair at different points in my life and has run my hand through my hair and found stuff in it, that's like a nightmare.
Oh, totally.
Just like, it's like this, the ghost story, the urban legend thing. It reminds me of the one where it's like the girl, a young woman lives alone in an apartment, or she's home alone for a night, and she's heard about a murderer on the loose.
Yep.
And so she grabs her dog and she brings her dog into the bedroom with her, and she makes the dog sleep at the side of her bed. And during the night, when she's scared, she reaches her hand down and she feels the dog lick her fingers and makes her feel better so she can go back to sleep. But when she wakes up in the morning, she finds the dog dead. And somebody's written, some creepy thing in the wall in the dog's blood.
Yeah.
And you realize...
Your fingers taste great.
Yeah, exactly. You realize that it's like, it was the killer licking her hand.
Yeah.
It's like, it's that idea of somebody touching you and invading your personal space and you not being aware of it until it's already happening.
Yeah.
There's something like viscerally skin crawling about that for me. So that moment in this movie is, I think, probably one of the ones that most people would find less scary. And yet for me, there's just something about it that always gets me where I'm just like, no. Ah!
Yeah. Yeah. There was a series of short horror videos on YouTube. It was actually one of the things that influenced the Dead Meat videos that I did back in the day. And they were like 2-minute long little short horror vignettes. And there was one that I thought was so good, where it was this woman in bed. She wakes up in the middle of the night, and her husband is next to her, and she kind of rolls over and kind of cuddles him or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's kind of talking, but he's not responding because he's asleep.
Yeah.
And then she kind of rolls back over to go to sleep, and her cell phone rings. And she picks her cell phone up, and it's her husband.
Oh no.
And he's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, honey. I'm not going to be able to get home tonight. I got to work late." And she's like, "Okay." And then she closes the cell phone, and then like very slowly starts to lean over the person in bed. And then for the first time, they cut to the reverse shot where you see the person.
No.
And it's just this like demon, this really creepy demon face. And it was so good.
That's good.
So effective.
That's good, but I feel like that's...
I'll show it to you when we're done.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I feel like that's one thing that this movie actually does pretty well, though, is that kind of... I know some of it's, computer augmented or generated, but a lot of it is just sort of like that creepy grudge face puppet or an actor in the makeup.
Yeah.
You know, like I think because it is those sort of more simple things of just like a body where it shouldn't be. A person whose face is just wrong.
Right.
Like those things I think are so much more effective than in terms of like scare inducing stuff. When you look at The Ring, you know, you watch like the video in The Ring, the videotape, and it's creepy as hell. It's really cool. I love it, but it's not scary.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find a lot more in this. This is not as good of a movie story-wise, but I definitely think it's a scarier movie.
I think so too.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Yoko stuff when she reappears with her jaw missing?
That's tough because I think that scene is really frightening. I think that's one of the moments where they do suspense really well because you know something's wrong with her. Whether or not you've put together the fact that it's her loose jaw, her loose mandible in the attic, you know that she went to this house and she was attacked and now she has been missing.
Yeah.
So you know something's wrong with her, and it is this slow, like she walks into the building and she walks halfway down the stairs and then she turns back around. And it does a really good job, I think, of being suspenseful. I think when you see her face is really gross.
Yeah. They get away with a decent amount of gore for a PG-13 movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably the goriest part.
I can't remember another PG-13 movie where I've seen a loose mandible. Let's put it that way.
Yes, and a woman with no lower jaw.
Right.
So I think she looks really frightening. But if you're trying to put this in plot-wise, again, it kind of adds these complications of, so is she dead?
Right. Yeah.
I feel like she should be dead.
Yeah.
But I don't know if she is. If she's not dead, is she also Grudge now?
Mm-hmm.
And
is she Grudge in Yoko form?
Right.
Yes.
Right. Is she sister of Grudge?
Acquaintance of Grudge.
Acquaintance of Grudge? Yes. Heir to Grudge?
Heir to Grudge.
But yeah, it kind of adds
emergency contact of Grudge.
Yeah, it kind of adds in all of those kind of complicating questions of where does this fit in this sort of mythology? Yeah,
and the Ted Raimi stuff feels like it's in there for the sake of we need to get another kill in here or something.
Yeah,
you know? And like,
we need to spice things up right now while detectives are talking. And
and that's another bit where it's like, I don't even know if Karen ever knows that he's dead because we don't even really know he's dead. They talk about it.
She's told in the very voicemail ex machina that Doug leaves her.
Yes.
Yeah. Where it's like, Alex and Yoko are dead. I found your research. I'm going to go find you.
Yeah. Boy. That was something.
Roswell guy and his plot are a low point of this movie.
I will say, this might answer some questions. This is from the IMDb trivia. It's a bit of a read, so bear with me.
Oh boy.
About 40 minutes of material was removed from the final cut. Approximately 7 minutes of deleted material was restored in the unrated cut of the film, including in the cut scenes, which were included as deleted scenes on the DVD and Blu-ray, were extensions of the scenes where Doug is walking Karen to work, extended scenes of the Williams family exploring their new home, an extension of the scene where Emma's corpse and Karen are discovered, and a conversation between Doug and Karen in the hospital about the corpses of Matthew and Jennifer being discovered. Susan also visits her family in the house, and upstairs Matthew is recreating Takio's murder of Kayako, possessed by him, but with Jennifer instead. He also vaguely rants about a woman having an affair before kicking Susan out of the house. He also takes a bloody roll of tape and heads to the closet, followed by Kayako. Susan's death was also longer, where after she finds that her brother is not in the hallway, she runs back inside and sees a hand jump out of the sink filled with water and dishes, and she rushes into her bed. Yoko's death was different. Before she is dragged into the attic by Kayako, she sees a smoky shadow materialize in the hallway, and as she crawls back inside the room, Toshio's cat appears and scares her into the closet, where Kayako grabs her. This is a recreation of a similar scene in Ju-on with Yuki. An entire subplot concerning Yoko's dismembered jaw and her missing corpse was also deleted. Detective Nakagawa is talking with a forensics technician and asks if it's possible to survive without a human jaw, which is a recreation of an identical scene in Ju-on, where the same question is asked, and he gives an uncertain answer. Igarashi also informs him that the real estate agent Suzuki that sold the house to the Williams sisters, to the Williams has died. His fate is left unknown in the theatrical cut. That's true. He does go into the house and he never gets grudged.
Yeah, I was going to say I actually kind of like that inclusion of like, he went in there, he's dead.
Yeah.
That's how it works. You go in once and that's all it takes.
Yeah. In the morgue, where the detectives are examining the corpses of Alex and Yoko, the mortician theorizes that because Yoko's blood was covering Alex, that she must have killed him, which would imply that she was somehow able to survive 2 or 3 days without her jaw, baffling everyone. So I don't know if that really would have added much in the way of explaining things.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with most of those cuts.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I maybe would think about including a little bit more of is with the Williamses, with Matthew and Jennifer, sort of highlighting that these ghosts are making people relive their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's more, that's always kind of was what I thought was more the point, is that they are recreating their own violent deaths over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't think this movie does a good job of displaying that.
No, it really doesn't.
And I kind of wish, if that was the point, that they did that.
Yeah.
Like they actually went there and sort of said, even when Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up and she's looking for her boyfriend, even if he came out and was like, I can't believe you do this to me, and then attacked her.
Sure.
I'd be like,
yeah.
oh, I get it. All right. The ghosts are possessing people.
Yeah. Right.
And that's why they didn't kill her right away, is they were like, yes, we can lure you both here and then recreate our deaths.
Yeah. Grudge and Son seem to be more interested in improv than anything else.
Yes. Whereas husband of Grudge is a little one note, shall we say.
Yeah. I guess in the original Japanese version, the husband loses his mind because he believes his son to be the son of what would be the Bill Pullman character, which is why he attacks and why he kills the wife. And stuff.
And the son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that is even a little bit more detail where I'm like, okay, all right, I get it.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not in this, and so it still feels a little bit kind of like, disparate and
and it's really interesting. Something that actually The Ring does as well is that these ghosts that have come back for revenge are not purely innocent victims, which I think is really interesting. Like Toshio is son of Grudge.
Son of Grudge.
He is an innocent victim. He didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
I'm not saying that like Samara in The Ring deserved to get thrown into a well and left for dead, but in The Ring she has psychic powers and is using them to torment people around her.
Right. We watched that movie like 2 months ago and I already forgot.
You've already forgotten about
I always
that
forget
part.
about that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, that she's sort of some Damien from The Omen figure, who is like psychologically damaging everybody around her.
Yeah.
So she's not an innocent, is all I'm saying. And then in this, Kayako is stalking her professor.
Right.
And she hasn't done anything violent, but she's definitely stalking him and harassing him. And it's kind of like just, I feel like in some ways it's sort of dismissed a little bit because it's like, oh, well, they didn't actually have an affair. And it's like, no, but if the genders of these two characters were swapped, this would be deeply menacing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, all right,
that's another bit that feels kind of audition-y.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's interesting because it's sort of like she has made choices that have led her to this point.
So you're saying she deserved it?
No. Because also I feel like the husband is quite a cipher.
Yeah.
Like you never get any detail about him. He just, it's... I paused real quick on the when Sarah Michelle Gellar is going through the newspaper clippings just to see, and in the newspaper clippings it was like, oh, everybody thought he was a loving husband. And it's like, okay, so he just out of nowhere murdered her?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff in there that is, again, it's a little loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
So in one of the things it said, the flashback to Takeo's death also reveals that she ripped off his jaw in addition to strangling him. So
Wait, what?
Yeah. So
Wait.
that's where the mandible pull is something that happened to the father in addition to... That's not in the movie, right?
No.
I didn't think so. I saw that mentioned a couple
and he hangs
times.
himself.
Yeah. I saw that mentioned a couple times in the trivia, and I didn't know what it was talking about. But
yeah, no, my I don't know where the jaw thing came from, but my understanding was always that Takeo murders their son.
Yep.
Then murders his wife and then hangs himself.
Yeah, that's what I understood it to be as well.
Yeah.
Kayako's signature croak, also referred to as a death rattle, comes from the fact that her husband Takeo had snapped her neck but hadn't killed her, and she is trying to breathe through a broken windpipe. Her stumble also comes from the fact that her ankle broke as she was trying to run away from her husband. She's also covered in blood because he slashed her repeatedly with a box cutter. This scene... The scene that implies this was cut from the film to receive a PG-13. It was restored in the unrated cut. I'd be curious to see the unrated cut of this.
Yeah. I feel like in the Japanese version they show a little bit more of that because I feel like I knew some of that.
Yeah.
I actually just I like the what they do with sound in this movie.
Yeah.
Like she has that death rattle and kind of croaking noise, but that's also how the house sounds. Like when they're up in the attic, it creaks when they lean on stuff. And so I like that. And I like the conflating of the cat and the boy, that they both got drowned. And the cat yowling can sound like a child crying.
Right, yeah.
So I think those things are really interesting, that they've kind of meshed these different things together.
Yeah. I do want to talk about the worst part of this movie.
Roswell guy?
Yes. Combination... unfortunately, of Roswell guy and Sarah Michelle Gellar's character. There's just nothing there.
Yeah.
And in a larger sense, I have been or had been very kind of baffled by Sarah Michelle Gellar's horror movie appearances, because I never felt like they figured out how to use her in a way that matched her. I don't know. Like she's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right?
But I wonder if part of that wasn't. I don't know if it was from her or from studios or wherever. But if part of it wasn't trying to figure out how to get her to be not Buffy.
Yeah, I think that's...
Like, give her an opportunity to play a different character.
I know specifically that's why she took the role in I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Which I actually think uses her pretty well.
Oh, yeah. I think that's probably her best horror movie that she's done. But, she shows up in Scream for a hot second, but that doesn't even really count because everybody shows up in Scream for a hot second.
Yeah.
But even there, like, that's right in the middle of Buffy. And so to see her like stumbling through a house is weird.
Yeah.
And then here it's like they don't give her anything. Like they don't give her a character at all to play.
Yeah.
It's just sort of quietly walking, trepidatiously walking through a house. And it's like, it just feels like a waste of her.
It's weird because I feel like based on her introduction in this movie, we're supposed to think of her as very competent.
Yeah.
Where, she wakes up in the morning and her boyfriend is stumbling around sniffing his own dirty laundry to see what's less disgusting. And she is barely awake and she's able to tell him, oh, bottom drawer, that's where your clean clothes are. Oh, this is over here. Oh, also I set the alarm an hour ahead last night so that we'd have time together this morning. And it's clearly supposed to be like, oh yeah, she's got it like all together.
Yeah.
She's really put together and her boyfriend's kind of a bumbling idiot.
Yeah.
But we don't get to see her really being competent in any sort of way after that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about her is that she comes off as this, they present her as this competent character, and they set her in a environment that is knocking her off her axis.
Right.
but they never do anything with that. Like it never.
And we don't even really get much of it. Like she goes on the train to find her way to the house, and she gets really close before she needs to ask for directions.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she very competently asks someone for directions and finds the house. Like there's not even like a. Yeah, I don't know. She's supposed to be a fish out of water, but she seems fine.
Yeah, like the fish out of water element never really comes back into play with anything else she does in the movie.
Yeah.
Like once she gets grudged, it just
Yes.
is sort of I get she goes through the requisite Google search or whatever, but I never get the sense that she's having any sort of character progression or overcoming anything.
Yeah.
She's just sort of a cipher for the plot just to get the information out. And I think thematically there's more interesting things that they could be doing and having her do than just sort of experience. Like even at the end, when she shows up at the end, Grudge just tells her what's going on.
Right.
Like,
she's just shown like she's got front row seats in this movie.
And even after that, it's like, thanks, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'll leave now.
Okay. So I'm going to go back downstairs. I'm going to try and find my boyfriend. I'm going to try and get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like even okay, moving back to the boyfriend, right? If they had played him, they kind of play him. I honestly, I don't even know if this is true because he's such a vacuum.
Yeah.
But like there's a bit of a sense that maybe he is not as considerate or on the up and up or something.
I don't know.
I can't tell. Because that guy's just like.
Or is he totally devoted to her? Like,
no idea.
There's no difference.
And I kept waiting for there to be something like, as she's going through this. We had what I kept waiting for? We had just seen Candyman. We went to the opening night of the Salem Horror Film Fest and got to see a Q&A with Tony Todd and watched Candyman. And I kept waiting for the Candyman thing where it's like, he's cheating on her with something just to give him literally anything, which at least at that point would link him. I guess what I'm looking for is, I feel like what maybe is missing is having some sort of impropriety built into him that would link him to the Takeo.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is basically Grudge being like, honey, you need to cut that boy loose because he is no good for you. You know what I mean? Like something.
Or vice versa, of her having some sort of doubts.
Sure, yeah.
About like, I came all the way here with you and now you're always either working or at school and I never actually get to see you. So like, why did I come here? Should I even be here? Maybe it's better if we break up and I go home.
Yeah.
And have him then become possessed by Takeo, who's saying, no, you're mine.
Yeah.
I won't lose you to anybody else. I'd rather see you dead.
Yeah.
Like you could do something along those lines.
I can't think of a character that is worse than that boyfriend that I have seen in a while.
Well, it's like you again, looking at The Ring, because that's the whole reason I chose this, is so because I think in comparison to The Ring, it's doing some similar things and they're both doing very different things. Rachel and Noah, I think his name was Noah.
Sure.
The two,
that sounds right.
Yeah, right? The two leads of The Ring, they have characters.
Yes.
You might not like them all the time, but they very much have characters. Like Rachel is somebody who gets obsessed with her work and figuring out the answers to certain questions, even to the detriment of her own family. Noah is someone who's kind of immature, kind of wants to do the right thing, but is fundamentally a little too self-centered to get out of his own way.
Yeah.
And they're flawed people, but they seem to be doing the right thing, and they have some sort of chemistry when they're in a room together.
Sure, yeah.
What can you say about Karen and Doug?
Nothing. Even in that opening scene, she's doing all the heavy lifting.
Yes.
He's just like, I'm going to be late for my thing. And she's being, charming as hell.
Yeah.
And he's just a vacuum.
Yes. Yeah. And there's no tension between them, sexual or otherwise. And that makes it really difficult to connect to their relationship, to them as people, because it's just like, this is not how... I don't know, if I'd been in the hospital because I had some sort of trauma and my partner reacted the way he reacts, I'd be like, oh shit, are we breaking up?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you not care about me? Like
that's the thing. It's like I'm the whole movie I'm desperately trying to figure out what the take is here.
Right, like, is he the bad boyfriend? Is he
Right.
the good boyfriend?
Because there is nothing. And
right.
it's just you're trying to grasp onto anything to figure out what the hell this guy's deal is.
Yeah.
And even that phone call you were talking about when he leaves that message, which is so strange because
Yes.
he's like, she leaves him a note.
Yes.
And then he says, he calls the house and is like, I don't know where you are. I'm out looking for you. But he's calling the house.
Right.
I don't
Did
know.
you go to that house? I'm going to go find you.
Yeah.
It's like, did people use answering machines that way?
Well, I mean, in Batman Returns, Selena Kyle uses her answering machine to remind her that she has to go back to the office.
Yeah. That's different, though.
Yeah.
That's a note to self.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, he's just, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
She can do a lot better than that guy. Yeah, I think that's more or less it for this.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the ending? The last little bit in the morgue there.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I kind of want her to either be free of it or be complicit in it or be dead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I either, because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, they've burned the house down.
But they saved the house.
Fine. But so she's still cursed.
Right.
And then we're just going to leave it there. So there's no resolution. That's not where you end that movie.
Yeah.
You go for another 20 minutes until she either defeats the curse somehow or she doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
You don't just say, and then she was cursed forever. The end. It's like, no, the curse kills people.
Yeah.
The natural ending is either you are killed by the curse or you somehow dispel it.
Yeah, the whole excuse me. The whole thing where, like, you've got this character who is your main character, and then all of the forward action shifts to this cop, even down to the point that it's his idea to burn the house down.
Yes.
And then she just does it because it happens to be there.
Right.
Like the gas happens to already be down
right,
there.
and
May
her
as well
dead
burn the house.
boyfriend has a lighter because he's a smoker.
Right, yeah.
It's like the only point of having him in that movie.
Yeah, and then you get to the end point, and it's like, it just feels like they needed... They
needed to end it.
Yeah, it feels very much like we need one more jumpy thing to go out on.
Sure.
How do we do one more? Let's lead her there. I think we could do like a YouTube, one of those YouTube like supercut analyses on the way that morgues are depicted in these movies.
Oh my God, yes.
Where in this
everybody
one,
can just walk in and out of them
yeah,
whenever they
in
want.
this one, they're bringing her down, I assume, to identify his body.
Yeah.
And they just push her into the room by herself and shut the door.
Yeah, they're like, all right,
Here,
you two have fun in there.
Spend some time with the corpse of your dead boyfriend. We'll be out here. Let us know when you're done.
Burned corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, like, why would she have survived?
I don't know.
They're like, they even say, like, how did she survive? And they're like, we don't know. We're looking into it.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so did Grudge save her?
Maybe.
And if so, why?
Yeah.
Isn't getting everybody to burn to death in the house where you were murdered kind of like peak Grudge?
Yeah, theoretically, that's what Grudge would want.
Yes.
You would think, I guess. No. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that's part of the problem is we don't really know what Grudge wants other than to grudge.
She's like, I really just want a haircut. That's all I've been asking somebody. Please cut my hair. It's in my face and I can't get it out because my arms are broken. And so I can't move it out of my face. Can you please just give me a haircut?
It's constantly wet.
I'm just looking for somebody to put my hair in a ponytail for me.
Man, if Grudge and Samara show up at the same party, that's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah, it's going to be awkward.
Because it's
wearing the same outfit.
Yeah. I actually wanted, there was a movie that came out a handful of years ago. It was Grudge versus The Ring.
Okay, so Greg is going to be thrilled. Because he asked me, have they ever done that? And I was I don't know.
They have. I haven't seen it. I've heard it's not good.
I'm shocked.
I don't even know what that movie would be. I'm curious to see it just to see like how they managed to do both of these things at the same time.
Just two levitating women with long dark hair in their faces. And
I hope
white
it's
dresses.
I hope it's Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, but it's Grudge and Ring.
Perfect.
Same girl played Grudge in this one as did in the original. Up until this film was beaten by Friday the 13th, 2009, which opened with a 40.1 million intake.
Wow.
This film held the record for the highest grossing opening weekend for a horror remake in history. With a $39 million gross. The sequel was greenlit almost immediately.
Yeah, I can see why.
Did I see the sequel? I honestly don't know. So I can tell you what I remember about the sequel. Sarah Michelle Gellar is a brunette in that movie. That's what I remember about the sequel.
Are you less of a fan? Is that why you're...
No, she looked great. I believe
no such thing as less of a fan of Sarah Michelle Gellar.
No. I believe her character gets killed in that movie. I don't remember.
And she should have gotten killed in this one.
Yeah, I don't remember where or when it happens, but I think they kill her off. And also, much like The Ring, this movie also got a fairly recent sequel/remake, which I did not see.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know what happened.
Yeah, I think it came and went pretty quick. I don't think it was particularly highly regarded. I guess the sequel, Grudge 2, there's a subplot in the original Grudge, the Japanese Grudge, with these two schoolgirls who end up encountering Grudge. And they cut that from this, and they sort of repurposed it for the sequel. So I think that's the main plot of the second movie. But
sure.
Yeah. So, do you think this should be on our list?
No.
No.
No, I do still think it's a really interesting movie to look back on now because it was part of that moment where The Ring came out and this came out and the second Ring movie came out, and there was all of a sudden this awareness that there were these horror movies coming out of places like Japan and Korea that were really scary.
Yeah.
And I think it was part of what has eventually led us to movies like Parasite winning an Oscar is because partially, Hollywood realized that movies from other places could be lucrative.
Yep.
But also I think it destigmatized it for audiences a little bit, where it's like, this might be foreign, this might be unfamiliar, but you can still enjoy it. And I think watching these American remakes, for a lot of people, especially I think younger people like myself, I watched the American versions and then immediately went out and got my hands on the original Japanese versions.
Sure, yeah.
And watched those. And that led me further into, I ended up watching the movie A Tale of Two Sisters, which is Korean.
That's on our list,
is on this list officially. And I really love that movie. And it kind of rejiggered what I thought a horror movie could be. Because in a lot of ways, I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I haven't. No, I'm looking forward to that one.
In a lot of ways, it's really not a traditional horror movie. It's an odd duck of a movie. But it's I think there's a direct line for me from The Ring to The Grudge to a movie like that, and then that kind of launches me out into a totally different understanding of what horror movies can be versus what was coming out in the early to mid 2000s in America.
Yeah.
So I still think it's an important movie. I just don't think it's one of the 200 best horror movies of all time.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I do think it is. It's interesting because I feel like you don't quite get the. What am I trying to say here? I feel like genre movies are easier to have people cross over into different language or movies from different countries.
Yeah.
It's easier to get people in through genre than anything else, because very rarely do you see people like a boom in French comedies or or German dramas or something, or you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think comedy, especially when when it relies on sort of wordplay.
Yes, that's tough.
It's really difficult to do that in translation and still have things come out being
Yeah.
funny. But something that's scary for people in one country is probably going to be pretty scary for people in most countries.
Yeah.
Like, as humans, we all have a few basic fears to be played upon. And so, yeah, I think it's easier to have that crossover moment.
Yeah. I also think, too, that there is one of the things that makes foreign horror movies so effective is the fact that they are foreign, because I've always felt that the language barrier adds a layer to the unknown, if you will. Like,
yeah.
if you watch like Italian horror movies, almost all of them are dubbed,
Yep.
or even there are subtitle ones, but specifically the ones that are dubbed. The dubbing, because it is so kind of uncanny valley,
Yes.
adds another layer of the bizarre and the unreal to what's going on, which I think lends itself to the to the genre pretty well, and makes it really easy to kind of fall into, like those Lucio Fulci movies we're watching. They don't even make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've got this dreamlike quality to them, and they've got this sort of odd vocal dubbing on top of it adds to that. And it all kind of works. And I think you see it in action movies too, where I mean, people have been talking about Triple R.
Oh yeah.
Which is,
we just finally watched that like a week ago, and it was amazing. It was insane.
Any Japanese action movies and stuff like that, there's something about
or like look at the TV shows that now people get obsessed with.
Sure.
Like I know Squid Game was like a year ago now, but especially like Korean TV shows are now huge in America.
Yeah, it's I think it is a great way to broaden your horizons into other countries' films, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. Gee, I sound like Donald Trump.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was like, what just happened over here?
Many people are saying Korean movies, very scary, some not so scary.
All right. We gotta put an end to this. We gotta get you out of that blue suit and take that red tie off.
At least I didn't do the voice. I was this close. I was almost
close.
going to do it. I hit the randomizer button. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, boop. And I'm excited because, boy, are we going to have a conversation next time, because we are doing number 174, David Cronenberg's The Brood.
Oh, yes. Oh, yep.
Get ready to talk about divorce.
Oh, man.
And the literalization of internalized misogyny.
Holy shit. This is going to be a doozy. I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up with some like whiskey next time or something, because I'm going to need to get drunk and yell about misogyny.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening. If you want to support the show, you can head over to patreon.com/thepensky-file, where Amanda and I are this year doing films off the Video Nasties list. April was Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. May is The Living Dead in Manchester Morgue.
Yes.
So we're getting into zombie territory here.
Thank God.
Should be very fun. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, son of Grudge.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Oh my God!